It's curious how things come together, but I just watched this video and before that I hadn't gotten done with this conversation. This also correlated to a conversation I had not so long ago with a coworker of mine, and all the parts fit together pretty much perfectly. This video talked about control and why it's so easy to manipulate and control people and the history of that and where that came from and the physical aspects there very specifically. I mean, I get that perspective, and it is a good place to start. Not denying that. I mean, obviously it missed some things, but that's okay. For its purpose, it does very well. Now the point is, it's very easy to control people with invisible boundaries. You essentially just get them to fear certain things, and because of their fear, you can get them to do whatever you want. Now you put up other invisible barriers that makes it look like they have all the freedom in the world and you can do whatever you want with them. Now, the question is it the fear of life or the fear of death? Now, animals, they essentially have neither, but that's because of our difference with them, and that's the understanding and perception of time. I mean, from the earliest points on, we're told to have goals and always be thinking of the future. Yet at any one occasion where we do something that is quote unquote wrong, we build guilt from that point on. So then we're also constantly fixated in the past. And always that way, looking to the future and fixated on the past. Yet never taking time to see the things that are around us when we are experiencing them. There is no timelessness there. From that point, there is no timelessness. And when you get to that point of timelessness, your fears just wash away. Now, everything obviously tries to avoid pain, so you can get the animals to do what you want with that aspect. In a moment, you will inflict pain on them, and then they'll try to avoid that same situation. It's obviously similar to humans this way, but you can't beat more eggs out of a chicken, or a tree or whatever, but you can beat more productivity out of a human. But the thing that they missed in that video was that the animals don't experience time like we do. They're just too in the moment, just way too in the moment. And it is the appreciation of life that we are also missing and lacking. They see and interact with the world around them in a way that most people don't understand. And they also have a full connection with their spirit. You have to think of the soul as a conduit to the creative spirit, to the creative source, to whatever word you want to use, to our roots, right? It works just like a conduit in a light bulb. Power goes along the light bulb, or current goes along the light bulb and lights out the light bulb. I mean, very simply. Well, what happens if you fray the conduit? What happens if that copper wire becomes frayed? The light bulb will flicker or won't operate correctly, right? So do the same thing with us, and shedding away a lot of details. Well, what happens? We're all connected, and I'll expand on this in a minute too. But we're all connected to the larger parts of us, and at least should be, and our soul is a major part of that. Well, if you think of our soul as a conduit going through all the various portions to our physical bodies here, and that's our larger guidance to our larger mind, then what happens if that's frayed? What happens if a nerve in your body becomes unmyelinated, where it normally would be demyelinated? That's you have in your nervous system, you have the nerves essentially send signals from your brain to the various parts of your body, and you think to move your hand, you're sending electrical signals from your brain to your whatever portion of your body to make these movements. And they need to be myelinated. Myelination is very simply just like a insulation around a copper wire. It keeps interference from interacting with the current in the wire, and also keeps current from leaking out. So uh, the current that is sent from the source to the thing using the power doesn't change or fluctuate in any way. So it operates within its specific band. Same thing with our bodies, right? Well, what happens? Say some nerve was to be unmyelinated. What would happen? The limb wouldn't function properly anymore, right? The signals would get lost in your body. They would disperse out. They wouldn't be sent quick enough, right? Well, that's the same way with our soul. Same exact way. Becomes frayed, and we don't operate like we should. You can relate this to roots in a plant. Just that unseen portion, right? If the roots become damaged, the visible portions on the top don't operate correctly, right? Can't uptake the nutrients it needs. But the other unseen portions are, without those roots in the soil operating correctly, the soil doesn't live properly either. Can't break apart the soil, can't hold the soil together, whatever. There's always consequences like that. Now, connection to everything, and everything having consciousness, everything also builds on top of each other. So, when I said that machines keep the body alive and the body eventually gets tired, that has to do with all your subsystems also. Well, how this works is, and this works for everything, any consciousness, you will have one half of the consciousness for itself and the other half for the larger portion, the connected pieces that it is creating or making up. So half of the atom sees itself as I, half of the atom for itself, and then half the atom for connection to, say, a compound. Then half of the compound is it's the compound, is for itself. Then the other half, the other portion, is to make up a cell. And then, that goes up to, half the cell, half of an organ or tissue, well, tissue around the organ, then half the organ, and half the body, and, that goes up and up and up and up and up and down and down and down and down. And everything having an experience of time differently. Your cells live in your body for a few days, right? But that's a whole lifetime to them. We live for around 80 years or whatever. Well, those couple days, it's not just a couple days to them. That's, the equivalent of 70 years. It's a whole lifetime. So think of how many generations of cells live on in your body. A lot, right? A whole lot. Very, very long time in those 70 years. And all things have an ending point, a beginning and ending point. Well, all the physical parts here, and that's completely fine. That refresh is very much needed. It's very much needed to go back to our source. So, well, tumors or cancer cells are the only immortal things in this physical plane here, and you can obviously see the issues that those arise. So, it's a move towards that type of mentality, that type of issue. But these consciousnesses, they get tired, they get worn out. They've been living for a very, very long time, and it just breaks down eventually. And the conglomeration that is our body just ends. We know we don't die, but it just ends. So we keep people alive unnaturally with these machines, and not a perfect, but it mimics cancer in a sense. We seek our immortality without even, I mean, the people seeking immortality realize that fact. It's like if you generally they're in microbiology, so they study a whole host and range of cells in cellular life, and I guarantee you they understand cancer, and I guarantee you they understand cancer is immortal. Go figure that out. Well, this is something that really is missed by essentially everything, but if you have a strong connection and really truly understand what I'm saying, and it sounds a little weird, but if you look after yourself first and mainly, you will look after everything. Now, I know that sounds weird, but you have to understand the perspective, which is that of it's universal. I don't see myself as separate from anything. Therefore, when I look after myself, I'm also looking after everything. If I lie to myself, I'm lying to everything. You see? Now, generally, this gets confused. There's two polar extremes because of this dualistic nature of reality right now. It's either, you look after yourself only or you look after a group only. The two are mutually exclusive. The problem is there is no neutrality there. Neutrality is that you look after yourself, you have faith in yourself, and then from that point, it it is impossible to not look after the whole. Because if you don't, you are then neglecting the whole because you are then neglecting yourself. It's a position of universality. It's a universal position. It is considering all parts, and you being part of that. Related that back to the earlier analogy. A part for you and a part for the larger whole. There are no mutual exclusives in nature. If you spend enough time in the forest, you'll eventually see this. The ideals of permaculture are based around this fact. Now, to end here, there is no death, there is no end, and I say that in saying that, and you can't really affirm that. You can't just sit around and speak this mantra and you'll have it. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately, right? But if that conduit becomes less frayed and you repair its capacity, you'll get to a point of timelessness where your fear washes away and you cannot be threatened because what is being threatened? Someone threatens your life. They're gonna take your things from you or whatever, which is completely different, but what would you be worrying about? So then you have to ask yourself, what is it exactly that would be threatened? Your so-called life and what you see and perceive here as life? That's what you'd be worrying about? And this isn't me saying that looking forward to death. I mean, life is to be appreciated, but if there is something threatening your life, then you will either do something about this and go on trying to solve this problem, and if the situation arises where then it then ends, then it then ends. But that is not the focus, nor is it a worry. The experience of timelessness is the experience of connectedness.